It is my pleasure to introduce Mary Allen Todd today. Mary was born in Rockingham and went to school at UNCG. And she did her graduate work in English at Duke University. Mary spent a year teaching in England, and she has traveled widely. Mary has an identical twin sister, and both sisters love poetry. Mary taught English at Charlotte Country Day for 35 years. The English Award at Charlotte Country Day is named for Mary. Mary's passionate about the English language, and her personal favorite is Shakespeare. And I don't mind sharing that Ranjit and I have enjoyed Mary's friendship for a long time. And every time we talk with her about literature or poetry, Ranjit and I come away really inspired. So I welcome Mary to speak with us today.
Thank you so much.
Uh-oh.
Mary, you are muted. Can we
Sorry, I was trying to spotlight you and I muted you instead. Can you unmute yourself?
There you go. That's good.
Whoa.
Good. Good.
Almost too much of a good thing. I'm happy to be with you. And I'm doing something different. Shakespeare is my supreme passion, but I'm going to talk about poetry in more general terms today. I don't know if we have ever needed poetry in this country more than we need it now. And I want to say a couple of things in background about that. First of all, I think about the crassness and commerce that surrounds us as opposed to what we would like, the kind of sensitivity and meditative state, the transformative state that poetry can bring to us. We have so much argument and competition when cooperation is what we crave and need and support for each other in all kinds of ways. And think about the obfuscation we deal with when what we really want is directness and simplicity and truth, as old-fashioned as that sounds. That brought to mind a poem, and most all the poems that I share with you today, and they're different poets, but most of them will be, and that's Malay because I've gotten into her on a big scale lately. But I want to start with one that captures why I think we need poetry so much, and it is Wordsworth's poem called "The World is Too Much With Us," and sometimes it seems to be. The world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given away our hearts, a sordid boon. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. Wordsworth, living in the mid part of the 1800s, Industrial Revolution at hand. And here he is saying, I'd rather be a pagan. I'd rather go back to a time when people were in touch with nature, when they heard in the sea gods that rose in front of them, when they heard the horn of old Triton. I just think he speaks for us now. But I also want to make a case for memorizing. I'll tell you this, it gets a great deal harder as you get older because I'm still trying to learn new poems. I told someone before everybody else got on, I know hundreds, maybe thousands of lines of poetry, and I continue to learn them because it's important to me. It's important to have something beautiful in my head when I'm around so many things that are crashingly ugly to me. But I wanted to go back and speak historically for a minute. You think about it. Our culture is based on what we've learned from so many other cultures. And how did they survive? There were thousands of years of oral language before anything was written down. It doesn't matter if you're in China or India or England or the Indian tribes of our culture or us, it had to be heard. Poetry is meant to be heard. So many people don't like poetry now. They read it and they go to the end of the line and then they get to the end of the next line and they worry about rhyme scheme, and all that stuff is immaterial, really. The rhyme will take care of itself. We do need the rhythm. I think the rhythm kind of lulls us into a calm state, almost hypnotic. It allows our humanity to surface. It allows us to feel more human somehow. But you think about how many people have kept language alive, not only, whether it's the epics, Aeneid and the Odyssey, the Greek culture, or whether it is the Epic of Beowulf in England, which went on for hundreds or maybe 1,000 or more years before it was ever written down. How did it go then? How did they memorize these things that were over 3,000 lines long? Well, some of them use formulas, and there are different ways to memorize things. I can tell you some of my approaches later if you want. But I'm thinking about repressive regimes too. If there were books in Hitler's or Stalin's era, they burned them. So what did people do? They put them inside their heads. They carried the books with them. Nobody can take it away when it's inside you. And that's what kept so much language alive. Think about the novel Bradbury wrote called Fahrenheit 451. In that book, the repressive regime is supposedly fictional. We don't know. But the point is, people then decided which book they would be and memorized the book and shared their books with each other. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful, beautiful thought. I go back to the goddess of memory. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. I know how to spell it, but it's Menaceme. I used to say Menaceme, but because I thought that was how it was pronounced, but I don't think that's the correct pronunciation. But she was married to Zeus in Greek mythology, and they had 9 offspring, the Muses. Think about our word museum. It comes from these muses, the temple that they had erected to the arts. What is going to keep us alive if it's not the arts, but the museum where we house our treasures? At any rate, when you think of the different muses, there were one muse was Clio, and that was the muse of history, but there was one of narrative poetry and lyric poetry, and one of comedy, and one of tragedy, and going down the line, there were 9 of them. But then you think about, again, how people learn and kept cultures alive. What about Abraham Lincoln? He had very little, my husband. What about Abraham Lincoln? He had very little formal education, but he read Shakespeare. They say his favorite play was Macbeth. He kept a copy on his desk when he was president. He knew passages. How can you write the Gettysburg Address if you haven't schooled yourself or been schooled in the arts? He didn't have the textbooks. He didn't go to school that way. He went to the great writers. Think again, and I'm going to get into some of the poetry in a minute. I'm rushing because I don't know how much time I have, and I warned some of them in advance. You have a leave button, and if I talk too long, just leave. I won't know it, and it won't bother me because I can stay here till 3 o'clock if you give me the subject of poetry, and I may do it, and I have that much poetry in my head. At any rate, Abraham Lincoln learned and loved Shakespeare, but think again about the different artists, how we internalize poetry. It becomes part of the body. When a violinist gets up to play and he has no sheet music, he has put it inside his body, or she has. What about the ballet dancer? I've seen pictures of them holding a document. I'm sure it is the instructions, where to move, how to move, what the different plies, etc. are. So whatever form it is, there was a man who, it was a poet, Dana Goya or something like that. He started a program with the National Endowment of the Arts, and 49 of the 50 states at that time said, no, it won't work. He said, give it a try, 1 year. If it doesn't work, then use the money for something else. And what he wanted is young people, students, junior high, high school, to learn poetry, to memorize poetry. He knew it would work, and they did in droves. And I was part of one of those projects, getting students down to Wingate and other places with their memorized and acted out their dramatic performances of verse. It turned some students on you would never expect anything else to do. And he knew that, and statistics prove true later, that more than 80% of the winners of those contests were either immigrants or people of color. Why? They know the value of language that so many of us take for granted. And they learned it, and it became part of them. So anyway, I could go on and on with that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give you a poem I'm going to talk a lot about Edna St. Vincent Millay, and I'm giving you very little, almost no biography, but she was fascinating. And she has been almost evicted from anthologies. She won the Pulitzer Prize in, I think, 1923. She was born in 1892. She was a woman after my own heart. She was anti-war and pro-women. She was an early suffragist, and she wrote a poem, a sonnet, as a matter of fact. I'm going to talk a lot about practically all the poems I do today are going to be sonnets. And I don't want this to be labored, because it doesn't matter what the definitions and so forth, but I'm going to tell you one or two things about the sonnet. So if you come across a poem that has 14 lines, it's probably a sonnet. Now, if it rhymes in couplets and the lines are 8 syllables or 6, it's not a sonnet. A sonnet is 14 lines of iambic pentameter. And just remember, iambic pentameter is the natural rhythm of our speech. It is the natural rhythm of our speech. 5 stressed beats. That is required for it to be a sonnet. Okay. And there are certain rhyme schemes. The sonnet has a history of almost 1,000 years, maybe more than 1,000. We know that Petrarch in Italy wrote some of the first and best sonnets. And because his were so good, they named the Italian form after him. So even when Edna St. Vincent Millay uses the Italian form, we call it a Petrarchan sonnet. It's a Malayan sonnet. She wrote it, but it is named for him. And it has a rhyme scheme, ABBA, ABBA. Whoa, that's 2 sounds for 8 lines. That's easier in Italian than it is in English. And so they can get by with it. Then the sonnet was carried over to England, and guess who excelled? We know, Shakespeare. He found that rhyme scheme a little bit more challenging, and so he had put more rhymes in. A-B-A-B, C-D-C-D, E-F-E-F, G-G. That's 7 sounds. At any rate, those are the 2 primary. Now, Spencer came along and he wrote still another rhyme scheme, but we're not going to go into that today. Anyway, I want to be through with that. I want to deal with a sonnet that is It's like a gift, I think. First of all, I have to define one word. The word is casket, because we know what we think of when we hear the word casket. It doesn't mean that in this sonnet. It's a little chest, a little tiny chest that you might keep jewelry or keepsakes in. Okay? So when you hear casket, it's not a deaf point at all. And Edna St. Vincent Millay wrote, not in a silver casket, cool with pearls or rich with red corundum or with blue, locked and the key withheld as other girls have given their love. I give my love to you. Not in a lover's knot, not in a ring worked in such fashion and the legend plain, semper fidelis, where a secret spring kennels a drop of mischief for the brain. Love in the open hand, no thing but that, ungemmed, unhidden, wishing not to hurt, as one should bring you cowslips in a hat swung from the hand, or apples or sonnets in her skirt. I bring you, calling out as children do, look what I have, and these are all for you. All for you. And I'm going to have a lot of sonnet. Now, let me tell you something.
Wow.
I love that sonnet. But let me tell you that sonnets and all poems are meant not to be read, are meant to be heard. I'm teaching the course to the sustainers of the Junior League right now. And I tell them what Brodsky, you know, the Nobel Prize winner poet, I heard him speak in Georgia at the Jimmy Carter Center, as a matter of fact. And he made the comment that you need to put poetry in your mouth. It needs to come into your body. You need to speak it. You need to read it aloud. A lot of people don't like poetry. They look at it on the page and it makes no sense. They read the end of a line. They read to the end of the next line. They would never read line to line. Read punctuation to punctuation. That's what you have to do to get poetry. The meaning. Rhyme will take care of itself. Rhythm will take care of itself. Read the meaning and feel it, and then keep reading it. And if this were an ideal world and an ideal 20 or 30 minutes or whatever we have, and I'll probably be going along when y'all are long gone. But anyway, that we would read each poem at least 2 to 3 times. 1 or 2 of them I probably will. There's one that I love, and it seems appropriate for this occasion. And it's another Edna St. Vincent Millay sonnet. I've done Wordsworth and one Edna, so now here's another Edna. And it's Shakespearean verse form. She used both the Petrarchan and the Shakespearean rhyme scheme, but this is the ABAB, CD, CD, EF, EF, etc. She says, love is not all. It is not meat, nor drink, nor slumber, nor a roof against the rain, nor yet a floating spar to men that sink and rise and sink and rise and sink again. Love cannot fill the thickened lung with breath, nor clean the blood, nor mend the fractured bone. Yet many a man is making friends with death even as I speak, for lack of love alone. It well may be that in a difficult hour, pinned down by pain and moaning for release, or nagged by want, past resolution's power, I might be driven to sell your love for peace, or trade the memory of this day for food. It well may be. I do not think I would. What a powerful ending. What a powerful last line. When I am moaning for release, nagged by want past resolution's power, I might be driven to sell your love for peace. She's been going on about what the importance of love. I do not think I would. Modern writers would protest, wouldn't they? Higher than the sky, deeper than the sea, wider than the ocean, whatever. But her subtle understatement, I don't think I would sell it in all those conditions. Wow, what a powerful poem. She has so many beautiful poems about love, and I'm going to, I'm going to have it ready. So if I need it, I have a whole book of the ones that I typed. And for example, they look like this, and I made copies for, and I wish I had copies for all of you, because it's so much more fun to read as you listen. But see, we're into listening. We're cheating children today. They're not learning by hearing as much. They're on those blasted, technology, if it weren't for that, we wouldn't be together. Okay, so praise technology. I'm glad we're together. But it shouldn't take the place of what those young people are missing. Anyway, I'm going to go to another poem. I Know My Mind, because I like this poem. I have about 12 of hers in here. I know my mind, and I have made my choice. Not from your temper does my doom depend. Love me or love me not. You have no voice in this, which is my portion to the end. Your presence and your favors, the full part that you could give, you now can take away. What lies between your beauty and my heart, not even you can trouble or betray. Mistake me not. Unto my inmost core, I do desire your kiss upon my mouth. They have not craved a cup of water more that bleach upon the deserts of the south. Here might you bless me. What you cannot do is bow me down that have been loved by you. What a powerful statement of love. You can take everything away, but you cannot betray what. And this is somebody who is been probably dumped, if you want the truth of the matter. She says, you cannot betray what is in me. That is a tribute to real love, to real love. She has another one of that ilk that I want to share with you. And, oh yeah, okay. Well, I have lost you, and I lost you fairly, in my own way and with my full consent. Say what you will. Kings in a tumbrel rarely went to their deaths more proud than this one went. Some nights of apprehension and hot weeping, I will confess, but that's permitted me. Day dried my eyes. I was not one for keeping rubbed in a cage a wing that would be free. If I had loved you less or played you slyly, I might have held you for a summer more. But at the cost of words I value highly, and no such summer as the ones before. Should I outlive this anguish, and men do, I shall have only good to say of you. Once again, another tribute. You, and what the idea, think about those kings going toward their death to be hanged or shot or guillotined or whatever, and the tumbrel rarely went to their deaths more proud than this one went. Some nights of apprehension and hot weeping, I will confess, but that's permitted me. Day dried my eyes. I was not one for keeping rubbed in a cage a wing that would be free. The whole idea of the bird, Anna loved birds. She loved the classics. She was a great pianist. She wanted to be a pianist, but her hands even were smaller than Trump's. And she couldn't figure out how to get the breadth. She couldn't get her hands to go the full octaves that she needed. And so she couldn't be a concert pianist, but she was very, very, very good. I wish I could tell you more about her background because she's a fascinating person. She was one of 3 children. The father and mother divorced when she was about 8. She grew up on Shakespeare. She loved Shakespeare. And she loved a lot of things, and she loved the classics. She was brilliant. Anyway, let's find another sonnet or 2 of hers. Somebody give me an idea every now and then of where we are. I have no clue about time.
Mary, you're doing well on time. You're doing well on time.
Okay, I have so many that I want to share with you though, and one of them is not, let me, in fact, because we make it cut off, let me share one with you that's not a sonnet. Here it is, and it's called
An Ancient Gesture.
An Ancient Gesture, and it shows you her love of the Greeks, etc., based on the Odyssey, really. And she, once again, you'll see her Greek leaning and her feminist leaning in one poem. You know that.
Where did she grow up? Where did she grow up?
She was born in Rockland, Maine. She spent most of the time in Camden. She had a near-death experience one time swimming out near the bay at Camden, and she finally got back to shore. But she had images that were almost resurrection images, and she wrote the poem Renaissance. I highly recommend that you look it up and read it. It's very, very long. I certainly do not have it committed to memory, but I would love to. It's a lovely poem. She won a prize. She won 4th place in a prize when she was in her teens. And the guys who won 1st and 2nd and 3rd all knew that her poem was better, and they were embarrassed to have won. But somebody said that no young sweet thing could have written that poem. They thought it would have come from a brawny man, and she laughed about that, and they made some comment. Her life, you read Savage Beauty if you want to know about Edna. She wrote, I mean, that's a biography written by Nancy Milford, I think, and it's brilliant. Her life was unusual is the kindest way to say it. She got in a lot of trouble. She went to Vassar, and the head of Vassar actually liked her because she was such a challenge. I won't go into more about Edna. She's fascinating. She was anti-war, she was such a strong feminist writer. But this one is from Penelope's point of view, but the speaker is I talking about Penelope. So it's a layered poem, and I really like it. She says, I thought as I wiped my eye on the corner of my apron, Penelope did this too, and more than once. You can't keep weaving all day and undoing it all through the night. Your arms get tired and the back of your neck gets tight, and long before morning when you think it will never be light and your husband's been gone and you don't know where for years, suddenly you burst into tears. There's simply nothing else to do. And I thought, as I wiped my eyes on the corner of my apron, this is an ancient gesture, authentic, antique, in the very best tradition, classic, Greek. Ulysses did this too, but only as a gesture which implied to the assembled throng he was much too moved to speak. He learned it from Penelope. Penelope, who really cried. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Ulysses. Yeah. And it brings back the whole Trojan War. Ulysses trying to get home 12 years after being the conquering hero. There's so much in the Odyssey for us, for children, because it's practically every human experience: separation of child and parent, war, struggles, challenges on the way home, etc. Children can get into an imaginative experience that can prepare them for some of the real experiences in their lives. Adults can go back in and relive with all the resonance of some of the lives they've already lived, pulling it out. We just don't memorize enough. I don't know. I'm a broken record. Okay, let me go to another one. This is one I love, and I don't know why I learned it. My twin wrote a play on Edna St. Vincent Millay and performed it. And she would be Edna, and then she would go out of spotlight and talk about it and what was happening in that point of her life when she wrote it. So anyway, I wish Nancy were here because she's really good at this too. And she doesn't know this one. I love to learn one that she knows most of these, and I do too. We've given lots of poetry programs together, and we generally do it for some charity. And if there's an offering taken, it goes to whatever cause the people are interested in at that time. This one I love. It's a woman who has been in a love relationship, and you think of that as a mountaintop experience. It no doubt is over for whatever reason. She is on the way back to where she lived before, and it's done in the form of a journey up a path, up and then back down. So you'll sense this. She says, "Now by the path I climbed, I journey back. The oaks have grown, I have been long away. Taking with me your memory and your lack, I now descend into a milder day. Stripped of your love, unburdened by my hope, descend the path I mounted from the plain, yet steeper than I fancied seems the slope, and stonier now that I go down again. Warm falls the dusk, the clanking of a bell faintly ascends upon this heavier air. I do recall those grassy pastures well. In early spring, they drove the cattle there. And close at hand should be a shelter too, from which the mountain peaks are not in view." Now think about that poem a minute. It requires a little bit of thought. She's coming down from a mountaintop experience. She's coming without his beauty and his lack, and she is now descending into a milder day. But she thinks about the shelter that's ahead. She remembers that much. And what will that shelter do? It will put a cover so that she can't look up beyond it and see the mountain peaks. And she is eager to get there because she is suffering the loss of that love. So it's a poem that she doesn't have titles for most of her poems, but she does have some. And I have to read you one that's rather cheeky. I like that. That's a word that I ran across a lot in England. That would be very cheeky, a little bit mischievous, a little bit coy, a little bit whatever. Anyway, she says, "Women have loved before, as I love now, at least in lively chronicles of the past, of Irish waters by a Cornish prow, or Trojan waters by a Spartan mast, much to their cost invaded here and there, hunting the amorous line, skimming the rest. I find some woman bearing as I bear love like a burning ember in the breast. I think, however, that of all alive, I only in such utter ancient way do suffer love. In me alone survive the unregenerate passions of the day, when treacherous queens, with death upon the tread, heedless and willful, took their knights to bed." There you go. Racy. And look at it. Can't you just see a castle with a winding stone staircase up into some turret where the queen, to avoid her husband, lures these lovely knights into her boudoir? Whatever. I like that one. I like a lot of her poems. You love music. She had a wide array of topics and moods and so forth, and I think this one is marvelous. It actually has a title. It's On Hearing a Symphony of Beethoven. And she says, "Sweet sounds, oh beautiful music, do not cease. Reject me not into the world again. With you alone is excellence and peace. Mankind made plausible, his purpose plain, enchanted in your air, benign and shrewd, with limbs asprawl and empty faces pale, the spiteful and the stingy and the rude sleep like the scullions in a fairy tale. This moment is the best the world can give, the tranquil blossom on the tortured stem. Reject me not, sweet sounds. Oh, let me live till doom espy my towers and scatter them. A city spellbound under the aging sun. Music, my rampart and my only one. For you, Romy. Okay. Isn't that lovely? That's a lovely poem.
It is a lovely poem.
It is a lovely poem. She has one.
I'm going to give you a quick 5-minute warning. So,
5 minutes more?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Oh my goodness. There's so many more, but let me do this one. This one is, I think, important because of all the horrors, even in North Carolina with the tornadoes and the Texas with the storms. And this says something about the power of man. And it's a Petrarchan sonnet. It rhymes A, B, B, A, so you'll hear a different sound. But anyway, this is one I really like. He says, the broken dike, the levee washed away, the good fields flooded, and the cattle drowned. Strange and treacherous all the fateful ground, and nothing left but floating disarray of tree and home uprooted. Was this the day man dropped upon his shadow without a sound and died, having labored well and having found his burden heavier than a quilt of clay? No, no. I saw him when the sun had set in water, leaning o'er his single oar above the fateful garden, faintly glimmering yet. Here washed the plow, here the updrifted weeds, scull across the roof and make for shore with twisted face and pocket full of seeds. What is man? After the worst, where is he going? He's rowing across his roof, making for shore, pulling out of his pocket seeds. That's what we do. We keep going.
Wow.
So, thank you all. Thank you.
Wow, wow. Amazing, Mary. Absolutely amazing. I think we're going to have an evening of poetry, and that's, one of our socials maybe will be about poetry. And really, we all love the English language, but the way you bring it to life is just, it's absolutely unbelievable.
It has to be heard. It has to be heard. And they're wonderful books of Edna, so find one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now we'll open it up to questions. If anyone has questions, please put them in the chat. Please address Mary directly. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry, Kevin had his hand up. Go ahead,
sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem.
This question.
Hi, Mary. Kevin here. Thank you very much for your incredible readings. I think that struck me more than anything else. I've always liked Edna, but I've never quite heard her. I've never quite experienced it like this. So thank you for your readings. I have a question for you. It's obvious that you value education. That comes across fairly strongly. What do you think the importance, the relevance of poetry is to the evolution of critical thinking? Do you think that that's something that's missing in our society today?
Oh my goodness. I think poetry is the fundamental, it's the beginning. It's the beginning. Culture, civilizations. You think about children before they go to school, when you're reading books to them, and after a while, if you miss a word, they say, oh, no. They're memorizing, they're learning. And the grooves in the brain are being, the seeds are being planted there in the brain. I think all thinking comes out of that level of contact with the language. And then you couple that with asking questions and hearing the development of the imagination. Facts change. There are new facts all the time. But the one thing that we don't develop enough, perhaps, is the imaginative world that children come into early, and unfortunately, I think frequently leave early, and they get programmed, and I worry about that. I don't know. I think the best thing is we start reading to them when they're in utero, and you never stop.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Todd.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, John. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just can't sit here and not react so positively, because you started by saying you're concerned with what's happening in the present age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm simply asking you to give your reaction to that incredible moment at the inauguration, and the new poet laureate blew the house apart with her great poem. You could feel the magic happening.
Yes, yes, yes. You're talking about Amanda Gorman.
Exactly.
Yes. She said succinctly, and her body became a poem with her gestures, etc. What Biden was trying to say in the whole thing. And she really did, I think, a fantastic job. I want her to live another 40 to 50 years before I judge her poetry, because she is so young. She's in her 20s. And think about what she has not yet experienced. It was what I think a lot of people will call an occasional poem, and it was dynamic. There's no question. She really stole the show that day. It's a lot of word play. It reminded me of what is happening with poetry today in the rap. And we say rap and we think, but some rap is good poetry. If you could just slow it down enough, listen to the words, they are saying important things just as she did. And that's what our hope for poetry is, in a way, that it's coming back into an oral tradition, that it is vital, vibrant commentary on the world. And she brought in, of course, the Black experience, and thank God she did, and she did it beautifully. I don't think right now that I don't feel that Shakespeare's place in the lexicon is threatened by her, but give her another 60 to 70 years. Well, of course, he lived to be 50 some, so give her another 40 some years and we'll see again. I think it was a wonderful poem. I loved it, but not immortal, not yet. A brilliant occasional poem.
Thank you for a magnificent morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're kind.
Absolutely.
All of you are kind. Is it okay if I leave?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Quanta.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it is the presenter that gives the beauty to the poem. So I really, really appreciate the way you presented. Oh my God.
Oh,
You
my.
are really awesome. And I would love to invite you to our club to give a presentation. And if you don't mind sharing your email and whatever information, I would love to get in touch with you.
I will be happy to share it. You want me to give it to you now? Ranjit has it.
I'll take care of it.
Ranjit has
I'll
it.
get it to Quanta.
All right. Thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you so much.
Any other questions or comments? One thought that I had while people are formulating their thoughts is, also wasn't poetry and song used by African Americans in the South to communicate escape routes and, say, okay, be careful of this or that. And so that's the oral tradition as well, that you keep things hidden. I really appreciated you sharing about that, under repressive regimes, getting the word out. So.
Absolutely. When you stop and think about it again, words led to music, led to ways to remember, and music, all of us probably learned that our ABCs by the tune. because if you just go A, B, C, D, E, you know, we can do it now. But when you were a child, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, that was the way we learned. And the connection between poetry and music, sound, rhythm, etc., is so vital. And I would love to have been in one of those meetings when the African Americans were in their groove of singing for freedom. That is a poetry. And Amanda Gordon captured some of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Paige, did I see you? Wait. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Jenny has one.
I just want to say this was delightful. I really, really enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. You can't imagine how much that means because I've been a wreck.
You did great.
Well, I tell you what, I do. All the poems I shared with you, I have memorized. I didn't have to read any of those, and there's so many more. I know Frost poems. I was thinking about that, how we retreat into the arts for our salvation, because life is demanding, it's challenging. And I'm reading that little tiny poem that Frost said, "In winter in the woods alone, against the trees I go, I mark a maple for my own and lay the maple low. At 4 o'clock I shoulder axe, and in the afterglow I link a line of shadowy tracks across the tinted snow. I see for nature no defeat in one tree's overthrow, or for myself in my retreat for yet another blow. We need what gets us away from the challenges and the hard parts of life. And whether it's cutting down a tree, which we shouldn't do now, Robert Frost was in a different time, but you know, whether it's cutting down a tree or listening to Beethoven's symphony or whatever it's doing to give us the strength to go back and do the things we have to do. And I think that poetry does that for me, and I wish for you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Barbara. Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Barbara. Barbara, if you unmute yourself. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Barbara, you're unmuted. Yeah, go ahead.
Now. Mary, I just wanted to say that I've just been transfixed and overwhelmed by how beautifully you have recited the poetry that you've shared with us. And it has been an amazing gift to me. And I started smiling at the very moment you began reciting. And I still have a sense of that in my body. I'm just so thrilled that you've been here today to share your gift with us. It's just wonderful, beyond words.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
There's so many other poets I love. Thank you.
Well said, Barbara. That was beautiful. Well,
one other thought, Ranjit, I was wondering whether we as a club could donate to one of Mary's favorite charities. I would love to participate in that.
We will do that. We will do that. And I'm glad you brought that up. That was what I was going to say next. But we will be donating to Mary's favorite charity. I'll get that information, Barbara, and you and I will do that. But yeah, thank you so much, Mary, for being here.
Thank you.
And Mary will stay on, if she don't mind staying on after the meeting ends, because I'm sure people still have some questions. And
I'll be glad to.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to go to the four-way test of the things we think say or do. First,
is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
Third, will it
build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth,
Will it
be beneficial to all?
And fifth,
will it be fun?
Absolutely, will it be fun? And next week we have Medicist on the 23rd. We have, thank you all of you who are participating this weekend in the Dr. Street program. And, look for more opportunities to work with promising pages and help literacy. This is what Mary is bringing to us, is literacy for children who don't have books, who don't have all these other opportunities. And that's, when you're helping promising pages, you're giving a child a brighter future. It's not just about doing a service project. That's what the end result is. So And that's the greatness of Rotary. And thank you all for being here. You've been a wonderful audience. Mary will stay on. And we look forward to more poetry in our club. So, all right. With that, the meeting is adjourned, but we're still on. Okay. Rex, did you have some questions, or did you have a question?
I think your club is wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Frank is still on here. Frank, you need to unmute yourself.
You got to do that, Frank?
Yeah, Frank. Excellent.
There you go. You're unmuted.
You're unmuted, Frank.
Yeah.
Hola.
Hola. All right.
What's that?
But Mary had another question. I read about Abraham Lincoln would stand on a stump and re-recite the speeches he heard in church in the morning, and and that's how he learned by memorization. How does it help people as we get older? Does memorization, stave off Alzheimer's? Is there any research around things like that? And
it's harder and harder. I think rhythm helps and rhyme scheme. And when I start to learn something new, I've just been learning a poem called God the Artist, and I like it because it has such fabulous images in it. And I will learn one stanza and say it over and over and over, and then the rhyme will help me. And sometimes at night, if I'm having trouble going to sleep, I'll pull a poem back into my head, and then I'll get stuck, and I don't want to get up and turn on the light. So I think the rhyme, and I figure what would rhyme with that, and then I go on and on until I pull that part of it back. I don't know how to say what helps you do it, but then just over and over and over until it's so much a part of you. I learned recently the poem called Funeral Blues, which is too sad to even talk about, but it's in the movie Four Weddings and a Funeral. It's by Auden, and I think it is powerful. I mean, it's such a tribute to the one who was lost to Auden. But I think you just have to repetition,
Sure.
It's just keep on at it until it becomes, it's part of it. I think it's like we were talking about the violinist or the ballet dancer. It becomes part of your system. And
right.
I just hope that by the time I'm at a retirement community, okay? So I hope by the time I start babbling, I'm babbling Shakespeare and Malay. That's my hope.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Frank, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
No, Frank is not. He's unmuted now. Yeah.
Right. We can hear you now if you want to talk.
Frank has heard so much.
I've never seen her in her full performance persona before.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course you have, Frank. Every time you go to dinner, she's in her full performance persona.
No, I'm embarrassed.
No.
Don't be embarrassed.
It's a beautiful thing. Mary. It's a beautiful thing.
Ranjit, I am making my schedule to finish the Rotary year. So is it okay if I just get it right now because I'm working on it?
Sure.
So I don't have to bother you later.
No, I'll text it to you right. I'll text it to while we're here. I'll do it right now.
Okay. I will save the file. I mean, you can write it here. That will be fine.
Sure.
I am so happy to meet you, Mary Ellen.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual, I assure you.
Mary is one of Charlotte's hidden gems, and we were very, very lucky to have her today.
Do you live in this area, Mary Ellen?
I'm in Matthews at what used to be Plantation Estates. It's a retirement community, and it's now called Matthews Glen. They haven't yet changed. It's right on 51. that goes.
Yeah, you're
Matthews.
close to me. I am off of Sardis Road. So
Well, you're very close. I have to go down Sardis to get to town. I used to go down Providence Road. I lived in right off Providence Road near Railroad, but now I've had to reorient my thinking about how to get to places. But yeah, very near Sardis Road. If you come out Sardis Road all the way to 51 and turn left on 51, you would turn almost immediately right into Matthews Glen. And it is a lovely campus. It's a beautiful place, really.
that's great.
It's quite large.
Excellent.
800 or so people.
So, Mary, how many books of poetry do you own now? I mean, you're one of those people. Frank had to downsize when he moved to Southminster, but you look like you've upsized.
No. I downsized. I have 3 fairly good sized rooms. I didn't show you this one yesterday, but if I turn the thing and show you this whole wall in front of me is windows. And this is my library, and I have a day bed in here, and there's a bathroom off this one. My living room, which has a wonderful place called the Carolina Room, which is all windows on all 4 sides, and kitchen, living room, and the Carolina Room is one long room. And then my bedroom, I took the small room from my bedroom because I figured you sleep there. And this one I come into for reading, and sometimes if I have company, we're in here. But it's not but about 15 or 1,600 and some feet. It's just, I have 2 full baths and a small bedroom and a whatever. It's nice.
Nice.
I like it.
Excellent.
Frank, I like the map behind you.
Yeah. Frank's in his office. I think, Frank, are you in your office today, or are you at Southminster?
Yeah. I don't know what else. There was something else I was going to share, but I can't think what it was. And talked out.
Excellent. All right. Well, does anyone else have any comments? Romy, did you have anything to say? There we go.
I just wanted to say thank you, Mary. I love listening to poetry when you share it.
It does have to be heard. Yeah.
Yes.
My students used to say, I didn't understand it when I read it, but suddenly it makes sense. And it really is how we have mutilated poetry. We get to the end of the line, and part of that is the early hickory dickory dock. Mouse ran up the clock struck 1, the mouse ran down, hickory dickory dock. But poetry, good poetry can't be read that way. It has to.
That's true.
It has to convey the meaning.
Read it to the punctuation, is what you said. Read it to the punctuation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that about Shakespeare. I can go.